Every chess player knows that the endgame can be a daunting challenge. But what if I told you that there is a simple yet powerful secret to dominating your opponents in the endgame? It's not a magical tactic or a complicated strategy, it's simply king activity. By making your king an active participant in the endgame, you can turn seemingly drawn endgames into wins. So let's dive in and unlock the full potential of your king. I am Ishan and you are watching Asia's Hub. So, what is king activity? As the name suggests, king activity refers to the degree to which a player's king is actively participating in the game, particularly in an endgame. An active king is one that controls key squares, supports pawns, attacks opponent's pawns, coordinates with pieces, and creates threats. King activity is essential in the endgame because it increases mobility, improves pawn structure, and enhances piece coordination. So, overall, we can gain a strategic advantage in the endgame and create winning chances. We will be looking at two instructive examples which illustrates the importance of king activity. The first example, which I'm going to show you right now, is actually a game played by Jose Raul Capablanca, who's a former world champion, against Savieli Tartakower, who's a very strong chess player in the 19th century. As we all know, Jose Raul Capablanca is an endgame beast. Let's first assess this position. White and black have equal material. White has an dangerous g5 pawn, which is a passed pawn, and it is a protected also by the f4 pawn. This king on c8 is very passive due to the active rook on h7. The white king can be active in the future, but the big weakness for white is the c3 pawn and also the a4 pawn, and white has to deal with that. If the white rook moves to d7, then the black rook will capture the pawn on c3, give a check to the king on f3, and the king is tossed back to the second rank, and now the king on e2 is very passive, and alone with the g5 pawn is not enough for you to win. So here, Jose Raul Capablanca understood that these three pawns doesn't matter. It's not about the quantity of the pawns, it's about the king activity. The only pieces which are needed to win the game for white is this active king, the dangerous g5 pawn, and this active rook. So here, white uncalled a beautiful maneuver which I have ever seen. And the move is king g3. You guys might wonder, what is the point? What if the black rook just munches the pawn on c3? Now the idea is to play king to h4. The idea might be to move your king to h5, then to g6, then to f6, and trying to mate on h8. And there's also another way which will be revealed soon. Black rook moves to f3 and attacks the pawn on f4. But Jose Raul Capablanca does not care at all. He just plays g6. Savieli Tartakower captured the pawn on f4. The white king moved to g5. Now the idea is to play king f6 and trying to mate on h8. If the black rook captures the pawn on d4, then this is totally losing. After king f6, king g8, rook d7, this mate on d8 is unstoppable. So rook captures d4 cannot be played. Savieli Tartakower played rook e4, and in this position, white king moved to f6 and threatened a mate on h8. Here there's a mate on c8, so the black rook moves to e8 and stops the mate in 1. The white king simply captures the pawn on f5, winning a free pawn. The black rook simply moves to e4 and attacks the d4 pawn. The white king again moves to f6, threatening a mate on c8. Here, if you play rook e8, white will play g7, king h7, king f6, and this is totally winning. So here, black played rook f4 check. The white king moved to e5 and attacked the pawn on d5. Black played rook g4, and here white played this very nice move g7 check. Here, if black rook captures the pawn on g7, you'll simply play rook captures g7, king captures g7, and king captures d5. Look at the difference between the activity of your kings. This king is way more active than this king on g7. Now simply the white king will just gobble up all of these pawns and the a4 pawn will just win the game. So rook captures g7 cannot be played. Severely Tartakower played king g8. The white rook captured the pawn on a7 because it's a free pawn. Why not capture a free pawn? The black rook moves to g1. And here, white king simply captured the pawn on d5. And now, white is 2 pawns up and Severely Tartakower could resign. But still, he did not resign and played rook c1. From now, it's just an easy win. You just need to convert this into a win and it's pretty easy for an endgame beast. White king moves to d6. White rook plays. Severely Tartakower played rook c2. This is actually totally losing for Severely Tartakower, but Severely Tartakower is trying to defend this endgame, and this is like totally impossible to defend, especially against an endgame monster. Jose Raul Capablanca played d5, rook c1, rook c7, offering a trade of rooks. He shouldn't trade the rooks because this pawn will just simply promote. After rook c7, the black rook moved to a1 and attacked the pawn on a4. The white king simply moved to c6. And after rook captures a4, and Jose Raul Capablanca finished off the game with d6, and Sevieri Tartakower resigned this game as there's nothing much to do here. This d6 pawn is just going to promote to a queen. And how are you stopping it? Like for example, rook d4, then the pawn on d6 will move to d7. Now the idea is to play rook c8 and then queen. If you give a check by playing rook c4 check, the white king will move to b7 and now the white king will simply move to c8 and the next move you'll queen and this is just totally losing. So from this example, we learn that it's not about the quantity of the pawns. In some situations, quantity of the pawns doesn't matter. The king activity is more important than the quality of the pawns in some situations, including this situation. Now let us look at the second example. This game was played by Eric Cohn, who's a very strong chess player, against Akiba Rubinstein, who's a phenomenal endgame player. They both have reached an interesting endgame where a trade of rooks are being offered and Akiba Rubinstein has a decision whether to accept it or to refuse it. If black refuses the rook trade by playing rook h4, then white will play rook c7 check, king f6, rook takes b7 and this should be closer to a draw. So Akiba Rubinstein traded off the rooks and now in a pawn endgame king activity is very essential. But you should be also knowing where the king should head to. Is it towards the king side? Is it towards the center of the board? Or is it towards the queen side? If black plays king d6, king c2, king d5, trying to infiltrate on the c4 square, white is just in time to play king d3 and stop you from infiltrating, and this is not enough for black to win this endgame. Akiba Rubinstein mindfully and carefully realized that this h2 pawn is a big weakness for white. So the destination for this king is on the h3 square. so that he can put pressure on the h2 pawn. So Akiba Rubinstein in this position played king f6, king d2, king g5, king e2, king h4, king f1, king h3. The black king made it to the h3 square, and this white king just barely in time was able to defend the h2 pawn. But now what? Here Akiba Rubinstein realized that his king needs access to the g3 square, and you'll be knowing the reason in a while. To have access to the g3 square, what you have to do is you have to cut off this clump of pawns. First, Akiba Rubinstein played e5, trying to sort of freeze these pawns. Eric Cohn played king h1, just waiting. Akiba Rubinstein played b5, freezing these two pawns. Eric Cohn played king g1, and now Akiba Rubinstein pushed three of these pawns to the fifth rank. So f5, boom, king h1, g5, boom, king g1, h5, boom, king h1. Now Akiba Rubinstein played g4. Eric Cohn played e4. Now you have to be very careful. If you play g takes f3, then e takes f5, you're totally losing because this f5 pawn is promoting to a queen. You can't stop it. So Akiba Rubinstein here played f takes e4, f takes e4, and he played h4 with the idea of playing g3 and clearing off these two pawns. Eric Cohn played king g1, Akiba Rubinstein played g3, Eric Cohn played h takes g3, h takes g3, and in this position, Eric Cohn resigned as there's nothing much to do here. Because if you play f takes g3, king takes g3, this is why you need the g3 square so that you can gobble up the e4 pawn and this e5 pawn will win the game. After h takes g3, if Eric Cohn tries to play f4 and after e takes f4 trying to create a pass pawn, you can simply play f3, e6, now g2. If king f2 then king h2, you'll queen with a check. e7, you can here play king g3. Now white will queen and now you can play f2 and this is just a checkmate. So from this example, we have learned that we should mindfully and carefully know where should the king head to. You shouldn't blindly just move your king to the center of the board. Always keep in mind your king has to be actively participating in the game. It shouldn't be passively waiting for your opponent to make a mistake. So the bottom line is king activity plays a vital role in endgame. I hope this video is informative. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe to our channel as it makes me highly motivated to make more fascinating videos. I'll be back in my next video very soon. Let's learn and grow together. Bye bye.